When you sin, when you mess up, what do you normally do? Do you run away from God or do you run towards God? Hi, this is Arnold and this is One Point, a conversation about faith, hope, and love. If this is your first time in this channel, can I ask you to click that like button? Mag-subscribe ka na rin and hit that notification bell. I normally release videos like this every week. We all mess up. Minsan small time mess up, minsan big time as in big time mess up. Huwag natin i-sugarcoat. We sin. We don't want to hear that word. But if we're going to be honest with ourselves, yeah, we sin. Unknowingly, but most of the times, knowingly. When we sin against God, what do we normally do? Can I answer the question for you? Our natural tendency is to run away from God. The first thing that we do is we hide our sins. Di ba mas madaling itago ang ating kasalanan as if God doesn't already know our sin? But here we are, we try to do our best and hide. Sometimes we run away from God in shame of what we have done, and then because of fear of the consequence of our sin. So instead of coming back to God, we hide. The most common thing we do is justify our sin. I'm not hurting anyone, so it must be okay. Maliit lang naman to. What's the big deal? I'm just going to do this once and then I'll stop. So instead of running to God, when we sin, we justify our sin instead. Lastly, we convince ourselves that God doesn't care, that He's not going to accept us because of our sin. So we run away from God, we stop going to church, we stop reading the Bible, we stop meeting with fellow believers because my sin is too great for God to forgive. Have you heard someone say, saka na ako babalik sa church pag naayos ko ng buhay ko? It breaks my heart whenever I hear this. You know why? Let me tell you why. Maybe you've heard of the famous parable of the prodigal son. Let me share that with you and some because probably you've missed something in that story. Jesus told of a story about a son who asked his father for his inheritance. The father, in his love, gave him what he is asking for. In ancient times, makukuha mo lang ang mana mo when your parents die. Pretty much like today. Parang sinabi na rin ng anak na, Dad, I wish you were dead. Anyway, the father gave him his inheritance and squandered it in sinful, wild living. Long story short, he eventually lost everything and ended up in the dumps. In the lowest time of his life, he had two choices to make. Should I return back to my father and have a chance to at least have a decent meal? Or should he stay away, continue to run away and eat with the pigs? His decision was the more calculated one. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. Pretty clever if you'll ask me. He probably thought, well, my father is kind-hearted, so if I go back, at the very least, I won't be turned away. But he has other plans. He actually wanted to pay back his father. Notice what he said there. He said, I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. Two things here. He admitted, number one, that he is no longer worthy to be called his son, which is true. He doesn't deserve anything. He isn't worthy to be called his son. And then he said, make me like one of your hired servants. In other words, I want to pay you back, as if he really can pay back the father. That's what we're actually trying to do. When we sin, we want to pay for our sins, as if we really can. We thought if I can be good enough, if I can do enough, I can be clean enough, then I can go back to God. Then He can accept me again as His son. Bad news. We can't pay God back. But here's the good news. While the prodigal son's plan is to pay back the father has other plans. When he saw the son coming, he ran towards him and kissed him. And while the son was narrating his memorized script, the father said, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals and on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." The father unconditionally forgave his son's death and accepted him back in the family. The father's love and forgiveness is not conditioned towards his ability to pay back. He just wanted him back and embraced him again as his son. It turned out that the best decision the son made was to run back to his father after realizing that he sinned against him. In the grand scheme of things, the father's forgiveness is not free because it cost him something. In this story, it cost him the properties he sold. Jesus, as he was telling this parable, knew that eventually he'll pay for the sins of the world when he would die on that cross. Today, when we look back to 2,000 years ago, we have the privilege of knowing what Jesus has already done, unlike his audience during those times. So today, when we mess up, when we hurt the heart of the Father because of our sin, what Jesus did on the cross when he paid for our sins is the very reason why we can have confidence that God will accept us unconditionally with open arms. I don't know where you're at right now in your relationship with God. Maybe there's a sin in your life that's keeping you out of intimacy with God. Are you tempted to run away? To just hide your sin? To justify your sin? You're trying to convince yourself that you need to straighten up before you can run back to Him. God's invitation for you today is not to run away, but run back. Run back to Him because He forgives. Jesus did the hard lifting for you. He died on the cross so you can be forgiven. You don't have any reasons why you can't run back to God. Come as you are and let God do the miraculous. Come with your baggages and let Jesus be the agent of change in your life. If you have some thoughts or questions, you can send me an email or a private message through the social media accounts posted below. I hope this video has been a blessing to you. This is Arnold and this is One Point. See you again next week.